And I want to read to you, this is an exact quote from Ben Shapiro in his interview on trigonometry. This is what he says. And you tell me what's wrong with this. He says, quote, "We have trained an entire generation of people to believe that if their lives are not what they want them to be, it's the fault of systems as opposed to decisions that are in their own control. And politicians have a stake in selling that." There's some truth in that. He says a lot of people in our industry have a stake in selling that. It makes people feel good about themselves and bad about the world. And the reality is, if you want a better life, you should feel better about the world and worse about yourself until you actually, go and do the right things. Here's where it gets good. He says, if you're a young person and you can't afford to live here, maybe you should not live here. That is a real thing. We've grown up in a society that says you deserve to live where you grew up. The audacity, imagine feeling entitled to that. He says, but the reality is that the history of America is literally the opposite of that. The history of America is about going to a place where there is opportunity. And if the opportunities are limited here and they're not changing, you should really try to think about other places where you have better opportunities. So much wrong with this message. And I would say in the first place, this echoes a conversation that Shapiro had with Tucker Carlson 5 years ago, where Tucker Carlson said, there's a feeling in America that things are changing too rapidly, that we are being crushed by the creative destruction of the market, the technological innovation, immigration, free trade. It's all altering society at a breakneck pace, and it feels like Americans in the heartland, in between the coasts, are sort of an afterthought. The industry's being hollowed out, the neighborhoods are being altered, the people are being displaced. He said, and people feel like they want to live in the town where their ancestors are buried, where 3 or 4 generations or beyond of their ancestors are buried. And they're being told, just go work on an oil rig or something. And Shapiro says, well, you're not promised that. He said, all you're promised in America is the adventure of a lifetime. He got excoriated for this 5 years ago. This is still his ideology. So the message to all the people that voted for democratic socialism in New York is, if you can't afford to live in the nation's biggest city, well, get lost. You grew up in New York and you can no longer afford to live in New York? Well, get lost. Go move somewhere else. Go move to Ohio or something. Go move wherever. If you can't afford to live in LA and San Francisco and Miami, Chicago, well, go move somewhere else. That's what America's about. You don't deserve to live where you grew up. Now, let's just say first and foremost, is the irony lost on anybody that this is coming from a Jewish Zionist who says that if Israel gets in any trouble, that America needs to go and defend them? That if Israel gets into any trouble, America has to send Israel taxpayer money? So let me get this straight. If you're in America, born in America, you're an American citizen, and you're born in New York City or Chicago, the place where your ancestors lived, if you can't afford to live there, you can't afford housing or transportation or cost of living, you got to get lost then. But if you're a Jew and you live in Israel and you have missiles flying at you, well, then the solution is America has to go and bail you out? In other words, the American taxpayer has no obligation to bail out the American people. The American government has no obligation to the American people. Americans are not entitled to live in America. But Israel is entitled to all of that. If you're an American and it's not comfortable for you in New York, hey man, get lost. Don't expect the American government to help you. But if you're a Jew in Israel and you're in trouble, well, then America has to send you missiles and fight your wars and give you money. Really? Israel's health care is paid by America. Israel's defense is paid for by America. Israel's existence in the Middle East is guaranteed by America. The land, quite literally, was promised to them, and we are the guarantors of the promise. But Americans are not guaranteed their own country. Americans are not guaranteed their own city, their own town, by their government. Really? This is the problem. This is what we're talking about. This is why we are not happy with the arrangement. Ben Shapiro is a guest here. He's a child of immigrants, recent immigrants. He married an Israeli. Do you know that about Ben Shapiro? Do you know that his wife is not even American? His wife is Israeli, which means his children are Israeli. So he is truly a foreigner. What's the problem, Ben? An American wasn't good enough for you? You had to marry someone from another country, in another country? He had to move to Florida where there's all Jews there. He moved to a neighborhood, of course, South Florida is all Jewish. What's the problem? You couldn't find an American woman, couldn't get married in America? You didn't like Nashville? This is the problem. Let's spell out the problem very simply. For the Jews, they are blood and soil nationalists. It has to be Jews by blood in Israel, that plot of land. God gave it to them. And God help anybody that gets in the way. What does it mean to be Jewish? It means to have a Jewish mother. They're Jewish by birth, by blood, by genetics. According to Jewish law, you are Jewish if your mother is Jewish, and this goes all the way back to Adam and Eve, they believe. Goes right to the beginning. They believe in blood and soil nationalism in Israel. In order to secure citizenship, all you have to do is prove you're ethnically Jewish on a DNA test. It's called birthright. It's your birthright to live there. And so for Israel, they're blood and soil nationalists. They're fascists. Ben Shapiro says all the Arab Muslims need to be picked up and kicked out of Israel because this needs to be a Jewish country for Jews. It has to be here. It has to be ethnically Jewish people living here. The state has to be Jewish. It's a Jewish nation. They're Jewish nationalists. God promised them that. But then those Jewish people come here. Ben Shapiro's ancestors come from Russia. Those people come here. And for America, they say, well, this place is for everybody. You're not promised anything. This place is not for Europeans. It's not for your ancestors. Maybe you have ancestors going back to the Mayflower or Jamestown. Maybe you have ancestors going back to the Revolution. That doesn't matter. You are owed nothing. You are not promised anything. Not the land. It's not yours. America's identity doesn't have to be European or Christian. No, see, all you're promised in America is the adventure of a lifetime, which means what exactly? The free market? So if you're hungry, if you don't have health care, if you're homeless, if you're a veteran, if you're disabled, if you're a struggling mother, if you're adopted, whatever your problem is, well, you're not owed anything. You're not promised anything, and America won't take care of you. Because America isn't a community. It's not even really a nation. America's just a big jurisdiction where we all agree on the value of the US dollar. Because what does a community have? A community has an identity. A community is coherent. There's a sense of family, familiarity. There is actually a sense of shared heritage, culture, religion, values. So let's get this straight. In Israel, they have free health care. In Israel, they're promised the land. Who? The Jews. Who is promised refuge and a home and opportunity and health care and security and prosperity and defense and a way of life and community? Jews are. They're promised a real nation. But Jews come to America and they say America isn't a nation. America isn't a community. It has no shared values, religion, identity, culture, anything. And you're not owed anything and you're not promised anything. If you can't afford a house, well, hey man, buy a train ticket. Like a bum. Buy a train ticket or a bus ticket like a tramp. Because the government won't look out for you. The community won't look out for you. There isn't a community. This is just a place where we buy and sell. This is just some marketplace. That's the problem that people have. Blood and soil for me, open borders for thee. Blood and soil, fascist, Jewish nationalism for Israel, but for America, refugees welcome. Open borders. Right? The best and brightest, multiracial, working class populism, colorblind meritocracy, whatever you want to say about it, that's what it's going to be for America. That's what's implied. And here's the kicker. Here's the best part. So maybe you could say that's a double standard, but it gets better. It's not just that Israel is going to be a community and a nation with blood and soil, and they get to do these things, and America doesn't. They have one set of values for Israel, another set of values for America. Here's the best part. They expect the American government to take care of Israel, but not Americans. So if a New York City, if someone who was born in New York City says, I want the government to help me, Ben Shapiro says, you're an ingrate, you're entitled. You're only entitled to opportunity. But when Israel's in trouble, they're entitled to help from the U.S. government. If you're an American and you say, I want the government to help me, you're an ingrate, you're a spoiled brat, you're entitled, you're a millennial. But when Israel's in trouble and says, I need the American government to help me, Ben Shapiro says, you better give them the missiles. You better give them the foreign aid or Israel's. That's the part that people really hate. The double standard is obvious. It's offensive. It's hypocritical. It's insulting. That's where people say, take your dual loyalty and go home. But to add to it, what makes it truly reprehensible, what makes it truly disgusting, they're not happy with the double standard. To add insult to injury, they want America to pay for their ethno-state. America will have no community. America will have no nationhood. America has no right to an identity, a sense of belonging, a sense of looking after one another. The government has this sort of role. It's not and Israel does. No, our government will also help them. So they have their nation and ours. God promised them the land. God promised them their ethno-state. And God promised them American aid. God promised them that America's going to pay for it. So Shapiro, with his Israeli wife, Israeli kids, his Israeli loyalties, he's got one set of standards for Israel and another for us. And at the same time is going to use his citizenship to lobby for welfare for Israel, but not for Americans. For Americans, he says, get lost, buy a bus ticket, get a job. For Israel, he says, think of the hostages, think of the Jews. How much do you have to actually hate a group of people to do this to them? Seriously.